Let's head into the last empty places with author Peter Stark and broadcaster Jimmy Mack. A podcast about the adventure of getting lost to find yourself. Join Peter and Jimmy as they head into places where sometimes the only lights are the stars, and the only guide, your wits.
Having a lot of background noise is never too much of an issue when you're talking with Peter Stark here on The Last Empty Places, a podcast about what it means to get lost in America and go into the places where the only thing that guides you sometimes are the stars and your wits. I'm really excited, first of all, Peter, that you are going to be appearing on Morning Joe as your book promotion continues. You got any nerves about that?
Well, a little bit. You know, it's a national TV. It's really early in the morning. That might be the worst part of it for me. And it'll be fun to do, though. I know that.
I got a friend who's come along with this. My good friend BJ Ganem, who is the founder of Sierra Delta, which is a veteran-centric organization that is focused on making sure that essentially every veteran that wants a dog understands what it means to actually have that dog. But they do everything they can to facilitate that possibility. BJ, how you doing? And man, when we start talking about why I invited you on, people are really going to get it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all that groovy stuff. How you been, man?
Been fantastic, man. Just living the dream, just having adventures.
Speaking of that, Peter, our friend here got back from Kilimanjaro. And I kind of wanted you to set this up for us, explaining why you went to Kilimanjaro, what you saw when you got to Kilimanjaro, and what the whole event was about. Let it rip, brother.
Yeah, so I mean, Chris Long, who played in the NFL for quite some time, won 2 Super Bowls, one with the Philadelphia Eagles and one with the New England Patriots. He's also, his dad is a Hall of Famer, and Howie Long. 10 years ago, him and Nate Boyer, who served in the Green Berets and also played at UT and for a little bit with the Seattle Seahawks, formed together to form the Waterboys. Chris had visited Tanzania and saw just the need of how many people had to walk miles upon miles to get dirty water. And so he got together with World Serve, Adventure International, and we put together this challenge for military veterans and former professional athletes to climb Kili, conquer Kili, if you will, in an effort to raise the funds to drill more clean water wells and get fresh water, clean water, to many of these villages that didn't have it. And so one of the most impactful things that I saw is before we even climbed the mountain, we got to visit 3 of the villages that were impacted by having these clean water wells drilled in their communities, and the difference that it makes for them to now be able to access water from a spout like we do. Like all the little things that we take for granted here in America is a dream still for a lot of people around the world. And so it was just tremendous to be able to be on the ground and see, you know, we each had a fundraising goal of a minimum of $10,000 to participate in this. And we did very good in fundraising. You can still go on. You can still go to the Waterboys under BJ Ganem and donate under me. But it was just phenomenal to see just what normal people can do. I mean, protesting is fine, but let's just figure out, like, in this day and age, we can do so much more to help solve the problems that we're facing. And I'm just grateful to Chris Long and Nate Boyer for creating this and just having that experience of summiting the tallest peak on the African continent with 12 other people that really care about making a difference in the world.
I also kind of wanted people to kind of know your own personal story. You know, you are a combat veteran. You served your country during the War on Terror. You have been a spokesperson for people suffering from CTE, people suffering from PTSD. You have also kind of made it your mission not so much to give handouts, but hand-ups is a big thing for you. And you and I have a real big point of connection in the sense that we agree on something, the idea that this isn't a special class of people as it is a special character of people. These are American citizens who are entitled to the same rights and privileges. And, you know, you have a deep concern about people not doing things for themselves, about people ending up being dependent on what they had previously done rather than what they're going to do in the future. You're very future and forward looking. And this show, that Peter and I have conceived about is about getting lost to a large degree our first season. And we mean that in every single meaning of it. And I was kind of wondering if you could just kind of unpack if you have two stories for us. One about whether it was in country or whether it was just having fun where you've gotten yourself genuinely geographically lost. And then two, maybe kind of spin that into talking about your own kind of journey where you were lost and then were found.
Well, I feel I'm perpetually lost. And a lot of that's on purpose. I've always kind of railed against authority ever since I was in diapers. And so I've never been afraid of experiencing something new. And that's how I ended up in the Marine Corps. I mean, I got politely asked by Georgia Southern University in 1996 not to come back. I had come in on an academic scholarship and left on academic probation. So I didn't want to get a real job. I just really wanted to travel the world and fight. And so the United States Marine Corps made perfect sense. I joined to become an infantryman and served from 96 to 2000 on active duty. And this is a time when we thought pretty much everything was done. We were drawing down our forces. And I was really disenfranchised as an infantryman. We couldn't even afford blanks. So we're grown men running around the world yelling bang, bang at each other in training. And so I got out, chased a corporate career at Kraft Foods, but I stayed in the Ready Reserves and drilled on every weekend and or 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year, plus being able to go to schools. And so that was in 2001, the towers fall and the whole world changes. In 2004, we were activated for Iraq, went there to the Sunni Triangle and had many adventures, if you would. And Thanksgiving night of 2004, I was critically injured. And eventually I would end my career. It caused the amputation of my left leg below the knee. A few other retained shrapnel, obviously some traumatic brain injury and whatnot. Lost 5 friends, Cantafio, Ramey, O'Donnell, Warrens, and Simon. That's the crows that you can see behind me. And then started piecing together, what does it mean to be a good veteran? I think the Department of Defense does a great job of creating warriors, but no one's really taking the time, what does it mean to be a veteran? And what almost drove me to suicide, I didn't realize it until much later, to around 2016, 2017, but what almoys drove me to suicide was everybody wanted to help me. I had lost a leg, but nobody really wanted to help the other 200 Marines that were with me. And I studied social work, got a master's in social work with emphasis on military life. And from the University of Southern California, became an accredited veteran service officer, was really trying to figure out how we as veterans can access all this help that's supposedly out there for us. But the one thing I kept noticing was, unless you classified yourself as being broke or broken, you weren't able to access these resources that everybody said that we earned simply by serving. And so that frustrated me. And I began to work with a lot of organizations, a lot of government organizations, private organizations, and started talking about how we're delivering services to veterans in this country is actually causing a problem. And people started to listen, most importantly, the Bishop family, the founders of Blue Buffalo. I started looking at dogs, and I felt that service dogs did provide a unique opportunity to connect with those veterans. And it wasn't until about 2019 that I realized that the ADA medical assistance service dog isn't what 99.5% of the veterans need. It's literally 0.04% of the veterans need a medical assistance service dog. The rest of us could really just use a good dog. And that's what we do different at Sierra Delta. We create a community for all veterans that challenges to continue to serve. That's what the Sierra part stands for in Sierra Delta. The Delta stands for dogs. And so we're helping these men and women cultivate a meaningful bond with their dog through healthy training and routine. We bring them into courses, both live and recorded online, to help them understand what it is they're actually looking for with their dog. Is it getting into hobbies like dock diving, or fast cat, or frisbee toss, or agility courses, or scent detection, or bird hunting? Is it just having a good family dog? Is it having a well-trained dog with some other things that they can use, maybe the deep pressure therapy, maybe just walking your dog every day, setting up that routine and connecting with. I mean, do you guys own dogs?
Not anymore. Not anymore. You do, right, Peter?
Definitely. Yeah, we have Maggie, who's a black lab, 13 years old, finally slowing down a little bit. Never thought it would happen, but in the last year or two, she still fetches obsessively. And nobody throws something for her, she'll throw it for herself. So,
And that makes you feel good too, right? And
yeah,
so 68% of American households already have a dog in it. We kill 800,000 healthy, trainable, and adoptable dogs every year in this country. It only takes 2 years to become an accredited dog trainer. There's plenty of good dog trainers out there. There's nothing special about service dog training. It's all training. And what we see is by allowing the veterans to have more access to the various different training programs that are out there, they realize that they don't actually want to do the work that it takes to maintain a service dog. It's 10 to 20 hours worth of work, but to have a good dog, it's only 10 to 15 minutes a day. So these are the things that we're trying to bring up. We're trying to allow these veterans who are accomplished individuals. And I think sometimes we forget about that when we're trying to deliver services to them. We keep trying to solve their problems for them. That doesn't work. And that's not what we signed up to be. We signed up to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And we have a lot of skills from the military that I get that maybe civilian population doesn't really understand. They don't need to. And this is where we're really trying to be different, is because I think the latent potential that exists in our veteran population, if we tap into that, we can help solve these problems easier and for less money and less complication. And so that's what we really do. We're open to all veterans. If they get verified by ID.me, they can come in, build a profile, start taking the courses, and sign up to get a Life Buddy grant for up to $3,500 to help pay a professional trainer to train not only the dog, but more importantly, the veteran on what they need to do to build that bond continuously. What I tell everybody is your journey with this dog, it's a journey. These are not robots. You can't program them like you program your AI bot. You have to continuously work with them. And this is the problem I saw with a lot of these psychiatric service dogs and emotional support animals. These dogs can't regulate our emotions for us. However, in order to work effectively with your dog, your emotions have to be in balance. And so your dog is going to feel what you feel. So if you're anxious, your dog is going to be anxious. If you're angry, your dog is going to be angry. But teaching these veterans that they are the team leaders of these Life Buddy teams gives them more agency, more control. And by not having to always exceed the standards, the highest standards possible, which is a medical assistant service dog, by giving them the options of like, hey, if all you need is like what I have, just a really good family dog that I walk every day. And that helps keep me moving. It helps keep me grounded in a sense. But just all the little things that dogs can do for us, right? Playing the fetch, being able to, again, to do all these different hobbies. There's so much more we can do. And the best part about it is everybody loves dogs, so you can't politicize this. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to do is build a community around that, being able to cultivate the love and loyalty of a dog through healthy training and routine and continuing to be of service to each other.
The thing I wanted to ask you both, I wanted to ask Peter first and then you, because, the question began as like talk about places to get lost, and we just very nicely transitioned there. But I wanted to kind of ask Peter and then you, because I don't have a lot of experience going on long journeys with dogs. Meaning that, I've had dogs in a car with me, but I'm talking about hiking, camping, any sort of like extended period of time in the company of dogs, by a campfire, going up, upside a mountain, going across vast distances. And I was kind of curious, Peter, if you, in all your adventures and the multitudinous adventures you've had, have ever had an extended period in the company of a dog on any of them. And I'm going to throw the same question back to BJ. And even if you haven't, I would love to hear what you guys know about how it is you're supposed to take care of a dog when you go on a trip where you might end up lost, because they can often get you unlost, both emotionally and geographically. So give it a shot, Peter.
Well, I have several stories along those lines. I've been on extended wilderness adventures with serious working dogs. Years ago, before we had kids, my wife and I ended up in northern Greenland, in the farthest north villages in the world. And it was so far north. You may have heard of Thule Air Base. That's the U.S. base that's way up there. This is beyond Thule Air Base. The Inuit up there still hunt traditionally with dog sleds and with harpoons and kayaks. And we ended up wanting to accompany the Inuit when they were going narwhal hunting. These big whales that are out in the ice flows. And so we spent some days on a dog sled and walking beside the dog sled or trotting beside the dog sled. And just to watch those dogs work together to pull, there's a big, heavy cargo sled across these cracks in the ice. And, there's just this incredible determination among these dogs to just keep going, keep going, keep going. So that was one experience. And you could see them work together. I mean, sometimes they were not always working together, and the master was not pleased with that. You just had the sense that we're talking about community here, a community or a family, and the sled driver, the hunter, was very much embedded in that community. Another time, I was sent on a magazine assignment on a adventure travel. It was called an exploratory, so it was just they were checking it out as an adventure travel possibility, and it was going horse packing with the hunters of northern Manchuria, and this is right up against the Siberian border in far east Asia, so it's like taiga forests and marshes, and these hunters called the Orichin, these native hunters, use dogs, and what the dogs would do is they would actually herd the deer and moose through the swamps and the taiga forest towards the hunters. And that was a remarkable scene to see, that these highly trained dogs, who somehow, I don't know how you train them, but they would round up the deer and bring them towards the hunters. And then, of course, we had our own adventures with our own dogs, black labs, two of them, different ones, on rivers, and hiking up mountains and high snowfields, and our black lab Maggie fetching sticks from the top of a mountain down a steep snowfield. And it was just like, oh my God, this dog's going to kill herself. But she was all about it.
That's a great thing about dogs. They're always ready to do what you want to do, right? They're never going to put you on hold. They're just unconditional love, right? And we can learn a lot from dogs, I think.
I told you what the previous Pope Francis said about dogs, right? The little girl asked the question, do dogs go to heaven? And Francis's response was masterful. He said, well, dogs are unconditional love. He said they're a sneak preview of the kingdom of heaven. And it landed, and everybody was able to kind of move on. It's one of those things too, where they often, it's like a famous kind of literary trope too, of the boy or the girl lost in the wilderness, and then the dog goes out and somehow finds them based on their scent or their energies, and is able to kind of bring them back or stay with them until they are better, right to the point where the latest version of Superman opens up with a dog coming across a snowy field and rescuing Superman. Superdog, rescue Superman. It's an ongoing thing. And BJ, the other thing is that for you, in many ways, your story actually does involve dogs in regards to your recovery as well. We kind of passed over that, but there are a lot of people who continue to kind of move in life, not leave us because they said, I can't leave my dog. There's a lot of people who choose to stay in the world because their dog allows them to hang on for one more day until they can get back to clarity and get ahead of that dark cloud, right?
Well, it's purpose, yeah. So I got close to suicide, and again, my brain was bruised due to traumatic brain injury, all the medicines that I was on, both legal and non-legal. And, I could rationalize everybody else away. They'd all be better off without me. But I had this old English bulldog at the time named Dozer, whose only talents were to, get slobber in places you thought was physically impossible to get slobber into, and clear a room with his farts. No special breeding, no special training. But he was enough for me to realize that if I quit, if I checked out, he'd end up in the shelter and be euthanized like these other 800,000 healthy, trained, well-adoptable dogs. And it's one of the most common stories I hear from the veteran community, that they were able to connect with a dog. And this is where we're trying to reduce the red tape, reduce $50,000 for a service dog, like, I guess, for somebody with severe needs. But again, the vast majority of people do not have those severe needs. And many of the veterans I know with service dogs don't use 90% of what that dog's trained to do. So let's include the veterans. Veterans, we all went to a boot camp. We all went to a school to learn how to train and be trained. So why are we pre-training dogs for veterans? Like most of the medicine is including them and letting them be a team leader again with something that they own. I mean, 68% of American households already have a dog in it. 70% of the veterans out there already have a dog. You don't need permission from the government to get a dog, and you don't need permission from the medical community to have a dog help you. In fact, I surveyed all the major medical colleges in this country. Not a single one is training doctors on dogs. So I question, why is everybody asking for a doctor's note in order to get a service dog? What matters is the training. If the dog and the person understands how to handle themselves in public and they can do so without being a disruption, then there isn't an issue. And so that's way easier than trying to pre-train all these dogs. And so it's just bringing a more pragmatic approach, and also wanting everybody to understand that I appreciate the gratitude that this country shows veterans. I honestly do. But just as though during the Vietnam War we didn't have enough gratitude, we might have too much gratitude today. We're putting ourselves on pedestals. People always try to say I'm a hero. And I'll tell you right now, and Jimmy Mack, you know me, I'm closer to a hooligan than I am to a hero.
I am sad to say I completely agree with that. More in common with a Bowery boy, you know what I'm saying? So
Exactly. And that's what it takes to serve. And, you know, we need to meet these veterans where they're at instead of putting something that we can't live up to, whether it's being broke or broken or being a hero. We need to just meet them where they're at. All the problems we're facing right now in this country are completely solvable. What we have to do is figure out the way forward, like you mentioned earlier on. And I think one of the best ways to learn what the possibilities might be is to get lost. I think our arrogance gets in the way. I think the human species is closer to knowing nothing than we are to knowing anything. And our arrogance is getting in the way. And what we need to be is more curious. We need to be able to get lost. And we need to realize that we're stronger than we give ourselves credit for.
Well, and that's one of our issues themes we've explored in this podcast, this first season of Last Empty Places, is that how getting lost, whether it's geographically or metaphorically or emotionally, in the end can be a strengthening experience. That you end up with the self-confidence that you can get out of that situation, that you have the resources, and that you can, in a way, trust yourself to find your way again. And, we've talked about how important we think that is to have. I love the idea of taking that journey with a dog beside you.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even if the dog's not there, like I tell people when I travel a lot, it gives me comfort to know that my dog's at home with my family, and I don't need a dog on the road. I'm a United States Marine infantryman. Like if somebody wants to start some stuff, like that's almost like a good time for me, So, I mean, and everybody's different. I mean, that's one of the great things about the veteran population is that it's one of the smallest minority populations in this country. But it's the most diverse by far, because anybody that's ever called themselves an American has worn that uniform. And so if we can understand how best to meet the needs of the veterans, especially being more dynamic, like we're trying to be at Sierra Delta, giving themselves empowerment versus trying to give them entitlement, I think we can do much better in taking those lessons learned from the veteran population and applying it to the larger population.
So, BJ, tell me how the trip to Kilimanjaro and drilling wells connects with the dog foundation that's working to provide dogs for veterans.
Well, getting ready for Kilimanjaro, I had to do a lot of hikes. And so I always hiked around here with my dog, put a little day pack on with some weight and just try to get 5 to 7 miles, sometimes 10 miles on a trail here in Wisconsin, whether it's just around the neighborhood or in these trails. And so my dog was always there, right? And it's good for him and it's good for me. And, dogs you can go in the woods and kind of get a little bored, but if you have a dog, you can always find a stick, play fetch, do a bunch of other things. And it's just fun to see his reaction when we come across some deer, come across some turkeys and stuff, and help him work through that. So that's just one of the ways. And one of the things that I believe in is that tomorrow presents new opportunities, and you should always be ready for that challenge. So when Nate asked me if I'd be interested in doing this, setting aside 2 weeks to get to Africa, to do that cross the Atlantic flight and all that stuff, you have to be ready. And the great thing about dogs, like I always said, is that they're always ready to do what you want to do. So as you're preparing, The dog's right there. And it gives you something to look forward to when you get back. But, taking on challenges is something I think is necessary for the human spirit. Doing hard things actually, I think, refills our soul. Whereas this comfort that we keep to find ourselves creates more of the depression that we're all fighting.
Kilimanjaro is, I mean, that is a task, a phenomenal.
Yeah, there was a couple of times where I wanted to quit,
I've never been that high, but I've climbed Mount Rainier, which is, a long way from the base to the summit, and that same thing, it's like, why am I doing this? And yet it's incredibly rewarding at the same time. And it really, it puts such a perspective on you as a human being in the universe, that you're in this massive landscape, and you're in touch with the sky and the earth itself, and you're this tiny human, but you're negotiating your way through all these obstacles. And after you get down the mountain, you look back up at it and say, oh my God, how did I do that? Just this little tiny bug wending its way all the way up there through these hazards. And so I think, in terms of veterans or anybody else, to have that kind of mission, that sort of self-chosen mission, is such an important thing to fulfill, both physically and emotionally. And as you say, it gets you out of that ordinary life and the ordinary rut you might be in.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, it's a big world. It's a huge world. I mean, I know we think it's smaller now because we're all connected, but it's not.
I think it's gotten bigger. I think it's gotten bigger because of that connection, is that we all think it's really, really kind of interlinked and we're all right next to each other. And then you go to Kilimanjaro or, then you drive out west and you go, oh my God, there's a lot of country around here, right?
Yeah. And again, we are just grains of sand. We're all just stardust. And, on that climb, so Mount Kilimanjaro is 19,304 feet in the sky. And you see all different types of climates and terrains on the way up. And once you get up past 10,000 feet, like every step is harder. And we slept a couple nights at 16,000 feet, and so the air is thinner. So everything you do is harder. And you have to focus on that. And they always say pole, which is slow. So we're moving slow, but purposeful. And it's more of a mental challenge than a physical challenge. Obviously you have to be in somewhat shape, but hey, I'm no underwear model and I got up the mountain. So, it's something that we can all do if we actually try. And that's where I think we kind of find ourselves is there's not many rite of passages. There's not a lot of challenges left out there that we haven't solved through technology, through these other systems that we built. But the free will is the greatest gift we've ever been given as a life form. And we have to kind of look for those challenges and realize how important they are. And to have a great mission tied with it, like Chris Long and the Waterboys initiative had and helping, they've helped over 600,000 people in Eastern Africa connect with clean water, which water is the most important thing we need to survive. And so to really put those two things together, I mean, it just goes to show that no matter what problem we see, let's find a way for people to participate in the challenge, to kind of walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, but also create the resources to make it better.
Well, and that's so elemental when you talk about climbing a mountain like Kilimanjaro and you get above, the vegetation line, tree line as we call it in Montana. You get up there and it's, you're in such a different landscape. It's like you're kind of entering the far reaches of the universe by the time you get to the top, and you realize how reliant you are on things, really basic things like oxygen when there isn't much of it. And I love that idea of combining that with drilling wells for the villagers who might not have easy access to water, because that too is so elemental. And doing something like that, I can see how it just connects you with real life so much as it's really lived on its most basic level, climbing a mountain and drilling wells for people who need water.
I wanted to end this, by the way, because I know BJ's got a heart out in regards to his very busy schedule, just like my friend Peter's very busy schedule. I, on the other hand, have copious amounts of time these days. This is a quote from Ernest Hemingway's The Snows of Kilimanjaro and Other Stories. Kilimanjaro is a snow-covered mountain 19,710 feet high and is said to be the highest mountain in Africa. Its western summit is called the House of God. Close to the western summit, there is a dried, frozen carcass of a leopard. No one has explained what the leopard was seeking at that altitude. And I love that quote because there are places that are full of mystery. And I think that's one of the kind of, Peter and I in the past have talked about deliberately getting lost, BJ. The idea that, sometimes you have to either make lost contingencies or make a decision to get lost. And I think that there are still a few places, that have frozen leopard carcasses for no reason at the top of them that are worth getting lost in. And you made mention of this, and I'd like to give you the last word here. You made mention of times you wanted to give up. Was there any time going up there that you were like, I don't know where the hell I am?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that happens in my own neighborhood sometimes. I'll be walking low-key, get lost in thought, and I look around like, where am I? Which way do I go home? And I've been living here for 20 years. But yeah, up there, it was, at one point in time, I had one of my prosthetic foot had broke a little bit, so it wasn't operating correctly, and I ended up getting a bone bruise on the residual limb. And so just constantly banging that limb, suffered that pain. Yes, Loki. There was a couple of times where all you could think of was just the pain, and you just forgot to look around. But when I looked around, looked at everybody else, reminded myself why I was doing it, I could knuckle back down and realize that I could. And by the time I got to the top, I didn't feel anything. But I will tell you, going back down hurt worse than going up. And it was funny, in all my times in preparing for this, I never even considered the way down. I just considered getting up to the top. And I remember getting to the top and like, all right, we got to go back down because they only let you stay up there for like 15 minutes because it's so high. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if I was thinking there would be a gondola waiting to take us down or what, but the going down was actually a lot harder. It went a lot faster. It took us 6 days up and only 1 day down. But it was definitely, I don't know if it's just because we were exhausted. I think, gravity is pulling you down versus, trying to resist you. But it was something that was really eye-opening to me. Is like, wow, I didn't think about the going down part. But it was quite the adventure. And I mean, there's so many adventures out there waiting to be had. There's so many great organizations like the Chris Long Foundation, Waterboys, Sierra Delta. I can go on and on and on. The ways you can get involved and challenge yourself, challenge other people in your community to try to do something hard for a good reason. And I think the more of us that do that, I think the better this world will be.
I love that expression, try to do something hard for a good reason. That's a really great summary of what, in a way, is like what life is about.
Absolutely.
It's Peter's governing principle. Speaking of doing something hard, going on national television tomorrow for Morning Joe, which we will talk about next time we all meet on The Last Empty Places. BJ, I hope there are more dogs, more mountains, and more adventures in your life. Thank you for making the time in your busy schedule. Really appreciate you, brother.
Indeed. Thanks for you guys for doing this. And I can't wait to hear more about all the other empty places you guys have explored and your guests have explored.
And now here's Claire with something that will get you to the next destination.
The Last Empty Places is a Planet Clare production and lives at peterstarkauthor.com. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all your favorite platforms. Write to us on the contact page at peterstarkauthor.com. And in the meantime, head on out and find an adventure.